Can I look at the ceiling?
Yeah, anywhere. You can look anywhere, yeah. Okay. So, I'd just like to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to meet with me on this.
Absolutely.
And,
I'm a Towson grad. So
Oh, you
I
are?
had to do it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Go Tigers. Okay, so, what sorts of factors are taken into account when sites are being considered for a beach restoration project?
Okay, well, in Maryland, we really only have two sites for beach restoration, and both are drastically different. We have what's known as Ocean City, essentially from the Ocean City inlet up to the Delaware line. And that is primarily for coastal storm damage reduction. So we look at things like, what is the investment that you're trying to protect, things like that. And Maryland's other beach renourishment project would be the Assateague Island restoration. And that's for wholly different reasons. That's for keeping intact habitat for endangered and threatened species. We also use a different methodology. So I can elaborate. Do you think you have something in mind in particular?
That's fine. That's actually, that answer, that was a really good answer, actually. So,
That's one.
in our research, we've heard that restored beaches don't seem to last as long as naturally formed ones do. And the process has to be repeated every few years. And can you explain why that's the case?
Sure. So we have, let me address the second part first, and that is that, so you have this constant background erosion rate. And for the Ocean City project, typically we see that about 200,000 cubic yards of sand leaves that system every year. Typically the drift is from north to south. So that was calculated and well established, I think, even before we ever put any sand on the beach, back in the early 90s. So we have this background erosion rate, which essentially we do the renourishments at Ocean City in a 4-year cycle. And essentially our renourishments are right around that, about 800,000 yards that we replace to the beach, because that's what the background erosion rate is. And I want to make sure we separate the Assateague and Ocean City projects, because they're so drastically different. The methods for placing stuff on the beach and things like that. The first part of the question again was?
It was, restored beaches don't seem to last as long as naturally formed ones.
Right. You just overheard the conversation with their coastal engineer, and said it appears that way.
Yeah.
But that's we'd have to look at the research that you guys pulled up. But essentially, what happens is the active beach profile actually runs from essentially the dune. Have you been to Ocean City before?
Yes.
All right, so you're familiar with the dune, and you have the beach berm. That runs actually all the way out to a depth of about minus 20 or 21 feet. That's the active beach profile we look at. When we place sand on the beach, you can only shape the beach essentially above the surf zone. So you can't do anything with placement of material out in the subaqueous portion of the project. So essentially, we stack the beach up higher and steeper than it would naturally be, and we allow wave actions and energy to essentially move that sand more into a natural profile.
All right. And another one here. Where does the sand come from when you're replenishing the beaches in Ocean City or in Assateague?
Okay, so for Ocean City, the sand comes from an offshore borrow site. There are a series of naturally formed shoals out there. Essentially what we're doing is we just shave off a little bit of the top of the shoals using a hopper dredge. And those sites, the site that we're currently using right now is between 3 and 5 miles offshore of Ocean City. Assateague is a little bit different. The need for the Assateague restoration was really caused by the construction of the jetties at the inlet. Those jetties actually interrupt that natural sand flow that goes from north to south. That's why when you go down towards the inlet, you see a lot of sand stacked up right behind the jetty. For that, we actually, since the inlet system disrupts the transport, we actually mechanically dredge sand out of the inlet and ebb shoal area, and then drop it in the surf center in Assateague. Assateague has essentially been starved, or was was starved for years, since the 30s, by the construction of the inlet, the stabilization of the inlet.
Yeah.
So the acetic sand comes from roughly, it's sand that was actually intercepted by the inlet system,
Mhm.
and the Ocean City comes from significant distance offshore.
Yeah, okay. And would you say that there's any impact on local marine life during these beach renourishment projects?
I would assume that there probably is, but we have a lot of measures in place to make sure that you don't impact the local marine life. One of the things would be, this may lead into your next question, what are the measures that we take to protect them? We do have whale observers on the dredges. That's a requirement. And then we also do, we restrict when the dredging can be done to some extent. I would say that the biggest impacts would probably be to sea turtles. But because of the screens and whatnot they have on the equipment, it's been greatly minimized.
Yeah, okay.
So that's definitely a big factor.
Yeah. Right. Do you think it would be more cost effective to build further inland and just allow natural erosion to take place, or is that not cost effective?
I think the cat's out of the bag with Ocean City. The infrastructure's there, it's not going to move.
Yeah.
And because that project provides coastal storm damage reduction, there's not much else you can really do. You're not going to you're not going to abandon Ocean City now. And, with respect to acetate, we created an unnatural system with the construction of the inlet, stabilization of the inlet. So what we're trying to do is essentially just mitigate for that by putting the sand back into the typical littoral drift pattern.
And another one here. There's been some debate about whether or not it's appropriate to use federal funds for beach replenishment. And do you think that it's a good investment in federal funds?
Absolutely is. And I can only speak. Let me just use Ocean City as an example. There's no doubt about it. If you look at we cost share the project with the state of Maryland, and there are two components to the project. There's that storm damage reduction portion of the project, but there also is a recreational component. The state of Maryland pays 100% of that recreational component. The federal government, the state, then cost share all of the storm damage reduction component. So the system, you have about 1.4 miles of a seawall at a beach along the boardwalk, and then from the end of the boardwalk, about 27th and 28th Street, up to the Delaware line, you have a dune and a beach. And those two work in concert to provide you with the storm damage reduction. So we're really, the federal dollars are only going toward the storm damage reduction portion. And if you look at the project, it was essentially completed in 1994. And over its lifespan, it's prevented in 2013 dollars, it's prevented something in excess of $700 million worth of damages. So the federal investment has been minuscule compared to that. It's a 50-year project. We expect that it'll run through 2044, and we're only in 2014 right now. We're only 20 years into it, if you will, and it's already prevented more than $700 million worth of damages to infrastructure within Ocean City. So to me, it's a great investment.
Okay. And how do you think it would affect the local economies of both Assateague and Ocean City if beach renourishment were to just stop?
I can speak about Ocean City, not so much Assateague. I mean, Assateague is one of the most heavily visited parks, definitely in Maryland, if not the country. They have in excess of 1 or 2 million visitors a year. And a portion of those people at Assateague, I'm sure, are using the beach, so it would impact that somewhat. But there are other components to why people visit Assateague. As far as Ocean City, I mean, that's obviously a big draw. That Ocean City is a huge tax revenue producer for the state of Maryland. So it would have, to not do the beach replenishment would have a tremendous impact on the state's economy. Typically from the loss of revenue. People would not come to the beach if there wasn't a beach.
Yeah. Okay. Those are all the questions I have. I'd like to thank you again for meeting with me about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, good luck with the project.
Thank you.